Breaking news now out of Washington, D.C., where, according to CNN and the New York Times, Energy Secretary Rick Perry has told the president he plans to resign. His departure date is not known, but you may recall Perry's name has been brought up in the ongoing impeachment inquiry.
Bloomberg reporting that Rick Perry, Secretary of Energy, has just told Donald Trump that he plans to step down soon from his job. As I said, as Energy Secretary, White House officials are not disputing that report to NBC News. They say soon. Exact timing remains unclear. Widely reported that Perry was going to leave by year's end. That's been speculated about for some weeks. It's possible now that this particular member of the Three Amigos may be in the departure lounge a little bit sooner.
Fox Business Alert Energy Secretary Rick Perry told President Trump today that he plans to resign. Let's go to Edward Lawrence, who has all the details. Edward.
Yeah, that announcement apparently given to the president on Air Force One. He was told that the energy secretary does plan to resign. We don't have a time frame for that resignation as we speak here, but the 14th energy secretary will eventually step down from his post. He made that official apparently today to the president. Now, he has been involved in this whole Ukraine thing in recent weeks. Just 10 days ago, the energy secretary said that he would not resign, but then his name sort of popped up as being part of a conversation. In fact, the acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, talked about Rick Perry, the energy secretary, being in a room in a conversation with them when they talked about money being dispersed to the Ukraine. But now it appears, we don't have the reasoning behind it yet, but it appears that Energy Secretary Rick Perry has announced his resignation to at least the president of the United States. Back to you.
All right, Edward, thank you. Let's bring in our own David Asman. What do you think about this?
It's very interesting. I mean, he did get a little embroiled in all this discussion about what's happening with the Ukraine and everything as to who spoke to whom in the Ukraine about what, coming in on the president's side with all this. So it looked like he was in good position with the president. I have a feeling, I know this is very unusual, that it might be a personal thing, that maybe he's got some personal reason for leaving the White House. And it's a grind. I mean, having been there a long time, when I talked to somebody like Sarah Huckabee Sanders, she was there, for 3 years and 2.5 years. That was a long time. Rick Perry's been there for a long time as well. It gets to be a real weight to carry around working for this White House, just for the hours alone.
Yeah.
Did Rick Perry offer his resignation to you, sir? No, Rick has been with me 3 years. He's right here. He's with us right here. And he's been outstanding. And we already have his replacement. Rick has done a fantastic job at Energy. But it was time. 3 years is a long time. And he'll be leaving toward the end of the year, at the end of the year. But in fact, I was going to announce it tonight at the rally in Texas. We have the man that it's a man in this case, we're going to be putting in Rick's place we'll be announcing it very shortly. Right here.
So what happened on the plane today? Did you just formalize it and with a letter?
With what, Rick?
Yeah.
No. Rick and I have been talking for 6 months. In fact, I thought he might go a little bit sooner, but he's got some very big plans. He's going to be very successful. We have his successor. We'll announce it pretty soon.
Is it Governor Abbott?
He'd be a good one.
Alaska?
And a friend of mine, he's another one. He was so tough. He was nasty, man. Boy, he hit me during the campaign. I said, that guy's ruthless. And when it was sort of over, there was nobody more gracious. And I called him. I made him Secretary of Energy. He's done a phenomenal job. And Rick Perry couldn't have done a better job. Really. And he's going to be leaving at the end of the year and probably coming back here. Whatever he does, it's going to be successful. But he spent 3 years with us, and I want to thank you, Rick. What a job you've done. Thank you. What a job he's done. He was also a great governor of Texas, that you know.
Joining the conversation for this chat, Robert Costa, the national political reporter for the Washington Post. Robert, Rick Perry out the door. What's going on with that?
As we've reported at the Post, Secretary Perry has been moving toward the exit for quite some time. The question now he faces is, will he comply with the congressional subpoena? And maybe he would be in a different position, some of his associates tell us, if he's outside of government, to make a decision on his own rather than worrying about the administration's assertion of executive privilege.
Robert, I'm curious about what you make of Perry's role in all of this. You know, he's now been, as I suggested before, he's part of this Three Amigos as someone kind of running Ukraine policy, kind of off the books, not as part of the normal diplomatic or national security and foreign policy chain. At the same time, the public things that he has said so far seem to suggest, hey, you know what, like, I was involved in this a little bit, and I wanted Trump to talk to the Ukrainians, but not only to talk about energy stuff. I don't have anything to do with the stuff that he's in trouble for. But do we think there's a deeper story here to tell about Rick Perry?
There's always more room to explore and to ask questions. The question I'm asking as a reporter about Secretary Perry is, what was his intent when he interacted with Ukrainian officials about natural gas in Ukraine? We know, based on our reporting, that Rudy Giuliani had his own ideas about how different oil companies should be set up, and natural gas companies should be set up in Ukraine, was talking to the president, was talking to Ukrainian friends of his, business associates. But Secretary Perry, as a Secretary of Energy, overlapped at times with some of these conversations. The question Congress will ask him is, was his intent to meddle in Ukrainian politics and business for political reasons, or did he have the intent to simply do so as Energy Secretary?
So, Robert, in the previous block, I talked about how a bunch of people who you thought that the administration might be able to put behind the stone wall, or people who were seen as loyalists to Trump, have, in rapid fire succession over the course of the last week, got on the other side of the stone wall and have turned out to be antagonists of the president, or at least have testified in ways that are damaging to him. If you, on the basis of your reporting, do people inside the administration look at Rick Perry and see someone who is dangerous to the president, or do they think that Rick Perry is kind of still under the president's control?
First of all, they don't really think it's a stone wall. We have a constitutional system. Congress has oversight of the executive, and the White House can assert executive privilege, but many of these officials, whether it's Secretary Perry or members of the national security apparatus, can still put their hand in the air and say, I'm going to testify before Congress if Congress is issuing me a subpoena. And many people involved, when you talk to administration officials, current and former, they want their hands clean here. They see an unfolding situation. Many of them now want to go to Congress to make their own case. Right.